Welcome to the Founders Foyer with me, Aishwarya. This foyer is full of conversations, the space where creators, founders, and builders can look for all the support and concepts to grow their ideas into products. There's been an infinite number of times I've spoken to people about how a career in comedy and building products are so similar, a journey that involves so much iteration, craft, and attention to detail. And dealing with audiences day in and day out, along with the market defining what takes a hit. Come on, how close can this get? Which is why TikTok, Instagram Reels, and a lot of social media content are going high on humor, not just for the content, but also the tech creators behind. So, what exactly can we learn from building a thriving business out of humor, content, and tech? I have just the right person with me here to tell us about it. Say hello to Alexis Gay, my favorite creator, stand up comic, podcaster, and a former tech community lead. Besides her content and scripts, she runs a non technical podcast wherein she interviews influential leaders from tech, business, media, and talk to them about everything except their resumes. How cool is that? Hey, Alexis, thank you for being
Oh
here
my
on the show.
gosh. Thank you so much for having me. I've been so looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. So am I. I can't wait to get started. So, yep, all the way from your tech career, which is like working in some of these tech companies like Twilio and
Yes.
Patreon and all of
Patreon.
those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And all the way to pursuing stand up and now to
Mhm.
full time business humor creation. What led you into this journey, Alexis?
It's a great question. And I get asked this question a lot, especially at parties where someone's like, "What do you do?" And I say, "I'm self-employed." And they say, "What does that mean?" And I say, "I'm a comedian, but I used to work in tech." And they're like, "What?" So it's interesting. When I talk about myself, I say that I'm a comedian and I have a podcast, and that's what I do
Mhm.
full time. But the transition from tech to comedy, this may sound odd, but it was very natural. Obviously, it was a conscious choice. I had to resign at some point. I had to say to the job that I loved, I am going to leave. That was very hard. But what happened was I was doing comedy on the side before the pandemic, totally for fun. I was making videos, I was doing improv comedy, I was making specifically YouTube videos, actually.
Mhm.
And it's not that, quote, nobody was watching them, but I would say that such a small number of people were watching them that it didn't feel like I was performing for a really wide audience. And there was a deep freedom to that creatively,
Mhm.
making whatever I wanted, really letting myself learn, letting myself try new things and grow through it. Really a fun, good outlet. It was not this, I'm going to get out of tech one day and I'm going to make it in comedy. I loved my jobs, but I loved having this on the side too, this creative expression, this opportunity for creative expression. And then when the pandemic hit and I couldn't perform anymore on stage, it really threw me for a loop, honestly, because I'd been using that time to decompress, to do something
Mhm.
other than my tech job, which again, I loved. And when the pandemic hit and I could only really create through making videos, or you could say I could only create for an audience through making videos, that's what I spent a lot of my time doing. And my attention span was gone because we were in a, a global pandemic. So I could not focus on making long videos. I could only really get myself to focus to make short, minute long pieces of content. And with how popular TikTok was getting, I thought, well, okay, maybe I should try these shorter form videos. And I started making a lot of them. And through that process during the pandemic, my audience really started growing. And it's
Mhm.
interesting, this notion of like business humor or tech humor. I think it's actually about only 50% of what I make is on those topics of San Francisco and business and tech. But I think that there was such a white space in the market for content on those topics that that's what I most closely get associated with. But in terms of actually leaving the job, it all happened very naturally because I leaned into comedy and then I leaned into comedy videos and then I really loved the process of making them. So I kept making them. The audience started growing. So I kept making them. The audience started growing. And
Yeah.
then over time, I realized I'm so much more passionate about writing my little tweets or scripting videos than I am about doing this job that I once really, really loved. And at the time, I was managing a team of 7 people. I had built the business operations team on the go-to-market side at Patreon and was running the creator partnerships team, which was the equivalent to our sales team.
Mhm.
And maybe if I was an IC, maybe if I didn't have anybody reporting to me, I could have stayed longer. I could have done both. But once I realized that I didn't have the same willingness to give 110% to my job anymore, I said, it is not fair to the 7 people whose careers are in my hands for me to care more about editing my little videos. So I resigned. I'm so grateful for the 3 years I spent at Patreon. I left December 31st, essentially 2020 was my last day. And so Jan 1, 2021, which by now, by the way, is a long time ago. But that was
Definitely
the first
seems
day of my full-time comedy podcast journey.
awesome. Oh my God. Like, I think listening to this story, I have like so many little details that you mentioned, which go a very long way in bringing out things that people usually don't believe in, right? Because when
Mm,
people say that, okay, I follow my passion, they think that, okay, the first step is to leave my job immediately and then go full
yes,
all in into the interest.
you're so
And then
right.
and then you realize that, oh my God, wait, like I didn't even realize if this is something that I want to do. So I love how, in your case,
Mm,
you kind of gave that room and space to grow into what you like and sort of experiment and see, okay, I do this for my day job. I love that as well. I love
mm,
doing something on my side. And then there was this realization for you where you thought that, okay, now I think going in full time would make sense because I see a clear path through this, or even
yes.
if not
Yeah,
as clear, you see a path through it. Like you can figure out
that's
things if you're going
exactly
to be
right.
like, yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's the best part. And like, I hope most of the listeners who are doing something on the side, like even folks like me who love their
Mhm.
day job, but who also like love tinkering around with stuff during their
Yes.
night and weekly hours. So I think for them, this is like a great journey to definitely look into. So thank you, Alexis, for sharing
Oh my
this.
gosh, of course, of course. That's actually advice I give to people when they ask the question how to get started. And I think it just
Hmm.
applies to anything, but I really think you should just start doing it. And I know that's incredibly and overly perhaps simplistic, but rather than make a bunch of changes to your life first to like make room for this new thing, I think it
Hmm.
makes so much more sense to just start doing the thing because, by the
Yeah.
way, you might not like it. I
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I've tried a
I
bunch of
know.
things and then been like, "Oh, I didn't like it. I thought I'd like it."
Yeah. No, I guess it's better to do it and then figure out what you like and don't like instead of probably like wondering, yeah, well, I think I might or I think I might not. So, guess like
Yeah,
just trying to do some parts of it on the side, if not like go full all in. So I guess yeah, that's like really one
absolutely.
lesson for us to pick up. So yeah. Cool. So let's dig a little more deeper into how you moved into comedy, like pursuing comedy
Yeah.
for the full time
Cool.
career, right? We're talking about how people have this very irrational, behavior when it comes to like just going all full in into the stuff that they want to do.
Mm.
But at the same time, folks who want to do something big also have this inertia, right? They always have this fear about, okay, will I be perfect? And if this
Oh,
is the right thing that I have to do, and I know
mm.
you always say that in order to be good at comedy, you first have to be bad at comedy. So I
Yeah.
guess this can be extrapolated to literally anything you want to
Yes.
do in your
So
creative
true.
space, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Like, how did this mindset help you, Alexis?
You want to know something funny? I actually think this mindset comes from the fact that I started my professional career at a tech startup
Mm-hmm.
because it's a very tech startup mindset to say, well, let's get the first version done. Let's just get it done, right?
Yeah.
And then we can make it better from there. But if you don't get anything done, if you don't write any code or, create the first version of your set, or you don't get anything done, you have nothing to improve on. And
Yeah.
I really think a lot of my approach to comedy came from 7 years total, is how long I spent in the tech world. Um, Watching my peers and myself just be like, all right, let's just start somewhere. Let's put something up on the wall. Let's put something in the Google Doc and then we can go from there. And the real trick though to how I actually did my first stand-up set is that I reframed what success would look like. I
Mhm.
redefined the KPIs of my first ever open mic. But literally that is what I did. I
Wow, I
was
love the
like,
sound of that. KPIs.
oh God. I mean, I just, the big fear that prevents people from doing comedy, and this is only my experience of what people have shared with me is saying, I want to, but I'm afraid of this, is what if I don't get any laughs? What if I'm not funny? What if people don't like me? And I totally get that. That's a very reasonable human thing to be afraid of. But it's very unlikely that you're going to be good at something you've never done before. I think some
Mhm.
people are more naturally gifted in certain ways, but I think it's highly unlikely you're just born an incredible anything. And so for my first open mic, I was so afraid of not getting laughs. Who wants to put themselves out there and be what feels like rejected? But I had this thought and I was like, hang on. What if the success was just doing it? What if I told myself
Yeah.
that success was doing it and failure was not doing it? And laughs had, or the reception and feedback had nothing to do with it. And I swear that is how I convinced myself to get on stage. I wrote my set, I memorized it. It was a 5-minute open mic. Um, and then I was like, okay, I just have to do it. And I have tried to keep that mentality for a lot of what I have done, which is sometimes the success is not, did people like it? Did it go well? It's just, did it get done?
Yeah, absolutely. I think success is more of a process or rather progress in this case.
Ooh.
It's like how you would want to grow into it. I think your example was spot on because often we tie success metrics to, let's say, how the audience would react or how a certain thing goes. It's always the destination, or it's always like what comes up as the outcome of what you do. But what if it's
Yes.
actually the process, or what if it's actually the journey? And
Yes.
just pushing yourself up from the couch by itself is like a success metric for you because you do something new. Like you mentioned, you just like
So
explored
true.
comedy, and that's like a new thing to do. So yeah, I think redefining the metrics is a very important factor. And I think looking back, you can tie this up with literally anything that you want to start, whether it's like a creative skill or it's like a new
Definitely.
business or like, just trying to start a podcast. I keep repeating this often, like even as a podcaster, you would have had this question a lot, right? Like people keep
Mm.
telling you, oh my God, like how you run this and how do you get to bring in people and,
Yeah.
like the list of points and what are the best practices. But I guess the willingness to just like get started and go get
Yeah,
going with people,
exactly.
I think that's the most important of all. So yeah, I kind of absolutely vibe with you there.
Yeah, I think that it is really hard to do things and it's really
Hmm.
easy not to do things. So I get it.
Yeah.
Doing
That's
things
like
is hard and not doing things is easy. Like that is what it is. But
yeah.
if I also try to tell myself that if it was easy, anyone would do it,
Hmm.
you know?
That's how. Yeah, that's
Because
true.
sometimes I need to reassure myself or motivate myself to push through not wanting to do something new,
Yeah.
scary, challenging, difficult, whatever. And I'm like, it's okay that it's hard. It is okay and honestly expected that this challenging thing is challenging.
Yeah, I guess like acknowledging it would put in a lot of sense into what you're enduring because I guess like not going by what other people would define as metrics, right? Like in,
Mm,
in in this case, when you search about let's say like taking up improv, the ROI
yeah,
is always about, oh yeah, you are a comedian, so like how many people attended your show, or how is it like
right.
to have like a room full of
Yes.
laughs, or like did
Yeah.
this joke just go flat? And like I
Right.
guess like we just like run other people's version of what could be like a success in our own heads. So I guess it's time to separate that out, and it's time to like redefine your own values and like get going with what you want.
Absolutely. And I think having a longer term mindset helps with that too. I think we're really
Mm-hmm.
conditioned right now, especially people who are putting
Yeah.
stuff out there on the internet, which is a vehicle for instant feedback, also often algorithmically driven and very
Oh yeah.
quantitative feedback. Um, that you can also think of it, or I also think of it as like, I want to do some version of what I'm doing right now for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So even if the thing, quote, doesn't go well, whatever the thing is, hopefully that's one more brick in my path of
Yeah.
how much more of this and for how much longer I get to do it, which sometimes other people who are receiving your work, whatever kind of work it is, they can't see the path. They only see the brick.
Yeah.
And you kind of just have to be like, okay, but I know that I'm building something much bigger.
Absolutely. No, I guess with the lot of changes that keeps happening in the tech landscape, right? Like we have
Mm,
so many AI tools, we have like
I
so much of
know.
tech that's just coming up, and you keep hearing all of this. Oh, this is going to create like a
Mm,
huge thing for creators, and
yeah.
there's like a lot of things to adapt to. And then,
Yeah.
like you said, the whole algorithm plays a role here because oftentimes it's not about your value of trying to create a great video or trying to create a
Mm,
great piece of content. It's a
mm-hmm.
lot dependent on, okay, wait, did this go viral on TikTok, or did this like just reach so many people on Instagram, and was it
Yeah.
like a very algorithmic thing? So I guess playing this long game definitely comes with a lot of challenges, right? And that's pretty much, Alexis, my next question to you, which is like, as a creator and like an entrepreneur who's trying to run a business that's entirely based
Yeah.
out of this content, I know
Yeah.
for a person like you, you're just like person of high agency, right? Because you're somebody who just looks at an idea in the morning and you would want that implemented by the happy hour. How do you balance that kind of being very scrappy, being very
Yes.
execution oriented with
Yeah.
also that long term mindset? So what goes into that
Mm.
process, and like what are the things that constantly keep coming up in your mind to balance this?
Oof, such a good question. And honestly, a pretty ongoing struggle. I don't feel like I have this figured out. And part of the reason is that the landscape I'm creating in and
Mm-hmm.
myself as a comedian and my life is constantly changing. And so it's hard to create a rhythm that feels repeatable and sustainable when all of these things are changing around me, when the sands underneath my feet are constantly shifting. And I think that's part of the process of that has been just accepting that it might not feel like I have it together, but we just have to keep on putting one foot in front of the other. Like some days I'm just like, oh my God. And I just have to keep going. What are you gonna do? Stop? No. I mean, you might want to pause, look around,
Yeah.
take inventory, say, what can I let go of? I'm notoriously bad at that. Notoriously bad at that, truthfully.
Mm,
When I think about, and I think the way I'm interpreting your question is about like prioritizing short term and long term. Do I have that right?
exactly. I know we
Yeah.
keep using a lot of product terms, but like I said,
No,
product
I
and
get it.
comedy go hand in hand. So
I think
it's
there's a lot of
great.
similarities. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
think it is, I really don't think that far in advance. I do not have a 5-year plan, for example. I
Mm,
have a sense for what I want to do tactically in the next let's say the next like 6 to 8 months. I have like a sense for the types of things, the types of larger long-term projects that I want to put work into. And the real challenge for me is exactly what we're talking about, which is how do I decide in the morning to work on a video that'll go out in 5 days?
mm-hmm.
Or do I work on a project that might not see the light of day for 6 more months? And the only way that I have found in recent times, in the last 3 months or so, to help me with this is I have a new way of blocking my time during the day, which is
Oh,
that I force myself, truly force myself. Like you should see me sit down and just rage against my computer. I force myself to not work on anything other than creative projects until 1 p.m. So I don't check
mm,
my email. I try not to um, think about the podcast, think about invoices and business. I really, until 1 p.m., I'm like, if you're going to work, which I obviously have to do every day, I am going to work on creative stuff. And the reason that that's been helpful is that I will work on a video and then I'll be like, well, I did the video, so that's done. And it is 11:30. So, and then I'm like, all right, well, I guess I have to work on other stuff. And so forcing myself to have that time is one of the only ways I have found
mhm.
recently to be putting time into projects that again might not be have that satisfying conclusion for several months. So forcing myself via having time on the calendar is the answer.
Wow. Yeah. I think to me, it sounds more like trying to stack rank your list of priorities,
Mm,
like trying to go and say, okay, if this hour is going to be for writing my script, I don't want
yeah.
anything else to creep into that. I just want it for like free flowing creative work. And let
Yes.
me like put that up on the stack and like keep rearranging all these blocks until like you
Yeah.
have a perfectly lined calendar. So
I
yes.
wish my calendar was perfect. It's so hard. I really don't think I'm good at this. Like, honestly, I think sometimes I'm like, it is a miracle that I'm getting any of these things done because every day I'm like, there's so much I want to do. There's not just stuff I have to do, but it's like there's stuff I get to do. That's another reframe I've been using recently, which is instead of, oh my God, there's so much I have to do. I try to tell myself when it's particularly cool stuff, I'm like, there's so much I get
Hmm.
to do.
Yeah,
That
that's a
is a
cool trick.
huge mindset shift. Yes, because then I'm like, that's right. You work for yourself. You're making stuff you like. You get to have these incredibly interesting, insightful conversations with brilliant people.
Yeah,
Enjoy it. You get to
absolutely.
do this. You can freak
Yeah.
out later.
I think it reminds me of what James Clear often says, like try to
Mm.
put yourself into the persona of this particular character. Like if you, let's say, you want to write a couple of pages, then think about yourself
Mm.
as this author who's sitting down to write these
Oh,
two
I
pages
like
out, and
that.
like try to go into this
I
mindset
like
of this
that. That's
person.
cool.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. So I
awesome.
guess like you said, like think about yourself as a creator for the next 2-3 hours. You're going to be
That's right.
focusing on the creative influx and like not let anything else come into the path. I think, yeah, that sounds more kind of a rational thing to do. And what
Yeah, I like
piqued
that.
my interest here was the boundary part that you mentioned, because I know I kind of feel that you need to have that momentum continuously to keep
Yeah.
going, because it's like it could turn off as a one-off activity if you just feel like, okay, I had this good day today, and let me just go back to how like doing the same things that I used to
Yeah.
do earlier. So how with respect to this momentum, I also like read somewhere that Nasir, who's like who runs the Nas Daily, right? And
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
he's one of your friends, and then like you kind of
Mm.
follow his whole setting up the boundary, setting up like a creative challenge for yourself, and then trying to
Yeah.
like follow this path to get consistent with your flow. So could you share
Yes.
more
Oh my
information
gosh.
into
I would be
what
happy
kind of
to.
challenges? Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So Nasira from Nas Daily in 2017 was doing and for several years was creating one minute video every day. I think he did
Yeah.
it for thousands of days. It was an incredible exercise in so many things, but discipline is certainly high on that list, to be doing something every day, to commit to doing something every day and then doing it. And at that time in my life, in October 2017, I
Mm-hmm.
had left Twilio without another job, and I didn't want to spend all my time like on the couch. I remember thinking, okay, I don't know what I want to do next, but
Mm-hmm.
I do want to do something. And I had just made a video for a friend of mine for her birthday, which is something, editing a video, that I had not done since I was a kid. I used to use Windows Movie Maker and all these other little
Oh,
free
good old
tools that come on your
times.
computer but when I was like a kid, we did like fake music videos and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And I hadn't done it in so long, but it was my friend's birthday and it was a special birthday. So I wanted to make her something. And so I made her a video. And when I was unemployed, I was thinking, I really enjoyed that. I really liked making that video. And then Nas Daly's channel was doing these 1 minute videos. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to make a 1 minute video every day for 30 days. And
Mm-hmm.
I held myself to that religiously. I think I maybe missed one day, but I think I made up for it with 2 videos the
Cheat
next
day.
day. Now, yeah, exactly. One little cheat day. But also, I was unemployed. So I had all day to do this. And it was funny because I would also have to start planning my life around it. Where if I was going to go do an activity on the weekend, I'd be like, okay, well, then I need to film in the morning, or I need to film 2 the next day, whatever it was, or the 2 days before.
Yeah.
And what this practice taught me was a lot, really a lot. One of the most impactful months of my life. It didn't feel like it at the time, but we're looking back, it certainly was. What it taught me was, oh my God, you can get so much better at something really quickly if you do it a lot, which is a really simple concept. I recognize that. But
Mm-hmm.
when I look back at these videos, I don't feel any sense of shame or embarrassment for how, quote, we'll call them, I don't want to say bad, like I don't want to judge them as bad, but I would say compared to what I see myself make now, there is a notable quality difference. And I
Yeah.
am so stoked about that. I am so stoked. Actually, fun fact, if you scroll all the way down to my Instagram, all 30 of them are there. They are the first 30 videos on my Instagram page. I never deleted them. I didn't take them down.
I
I am
think,
so full. I'm not ashamed at all. I think they are beautiful for exactly what they were, which were these baby steps into this really new thing. And that was in October of 2017. And
yeah.
so that project, that 30-day challenge, taught me that it really is possible to learn a skill, which I know that's like something we all kind of know. But I had this really obvious like I could look at it and be like, wow, that was the first one. And then this was the 30th one. That was also how I discovered that specifically I wanted to make comedy videos, because in the beginning they
Mm-hmm.
weren't funny. They were truly videos. I said to myself, all you have to do, video, 1 minute. That's it, 30 days.
Yeah.
And it also taught me a lot about something that I still try to put into practice, which is output over outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes for creative work, it's just important that it exists. It's just important that the words hit the page. We spoke about that a little bit earlier. But
Yeah.
I think also for giving yourself the freedom to let things go out into the world before they're 100% perfect. I do think
Mm-hmm.
having some sort of goal or guideline for how much work you want to be sharing does help you achieve that. Because in this case, well, the deadline was 11:59 p.m. and my best friend
Mm-hmm.
Romy would text me, "Where's my video?" And so I knew that I had to get it done. And I'll be honest, in this moment of my career where I'm in year 3 of doing this full time, my
Mm-hmm.
relationship with output over outcome has had to change naturally because there are a lot more eyes on the work. My standards
Yeah.
are different for the work,
Mm-hmm.
and how I experiment has changed. Experimentation these days for me in sometimes just looks like delegating more. It looks like handing over things to other people. That's an
Yeah.
experiment to me. That's hard. That has been a hard thing to do. These were my little babies. Does that
Yeah. No,
answer your question?
definitely. No, I
Great.
totally empathize with you here because often when you start initially, it's always like you running everything on your own, like
Mm-hmm.
editing, putting up
Yes.
these video montages together, and then like yeah,
Yes.
boom, yeah, yeah, here it goes. And then
Mm-hmm.
often when it comes to delegation, getting other people involved, you're like, oh my God, can you do it the same way that I would probably do it?
Yeah,
And then
can
you
you just
have
crawl
like
inside my brain and do it exactly like me?
I totally get you because like a lot of people ask me, oh wait, like do you do the design for this? Yeah, I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
I do. And then
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, okay, but then why? And I'm like, well, maybe I have like my own type to do
Yeah.
this, but I kind of totally, get this point of how do you like get other people on board and try to make them understand what you're thinking. But that
Yeah.
aside, a lot of what you told me earlier was spot on because what I could hear was how self realization is something that keeps, getting transported from one stage to another stage, right? Because
Mm,
initially your priorities were more around, okay, let me just get started, let me put something out, and let me
yes.
first like try to get a feeling of consistency and the fact that
Yeah.
I can go around and create. And as you
Yeah.
like ace that step, the next step in this journey would be like,
Mhm.
okay, I think I got my step one. So my step two is how do I get better at that? Like this whole
Yeah.
quality thing, I can like completely, give a high five there because just before this recording, we were chatting about how these new gadgets come in. Like I'm holding this mic and I'm like still wondering,
Yeah.
okay, am I like really talking into it? And like
Yeah,
setting it
yeah.
up
It's a
and
whole
all
new
that.
thing to learn.
Yeah,
Yes, I
I
was
know.
finicky with my light. I'm like, "Look at my new light," you know? It's all new stuff that we have to get used to.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess like each new input at every stage of our growth is like adding on like a new value. So I guess towards
Mm,
then you feel like what mattered to you before has probably transformed into something different right now. And like I
oh,
think that's like absolutely okay because
hmm,
you are also like growing as a creator, right? And for
mhm.
you who's been doing this full time for the last 3 years, I guess your lessons and like your takeaways keep transforming from each year. So what you learned in 2017 as probably like a very very new entrant into stand-up comedy could be very different
Yeah.
from a person who's running like this full-on business on her own. And
Yeah.
like yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think one of the newest challenges that I experienced at the end of last year,
Mm-hmm.
which was unprecedented in my relationship with putting out comedic work, was I had a new layer of fear come up,
Okay.
which was really unexpected because you would think that the fear would be the first time, right? The first time you
Mm-hmm.
put something up, the first time you announce your new podcast, the first whatever, that those are the only times you're going to be scared because, well, you did it. What could possibly happen after that?
Yeah.
And I had this really interesting experience with fear about 2 years into this endeavor where I suddenly looked around and I went, oh my God, I have something to lose now. And I had never had anything to lose before when it came to this. It just
Yeah.
didn't feel like there were, it wasn't that many people and it maybe wasn't that critical to my life and my lifestyle or whatever. And then I just was like, whoa, huh. Yeah, okay, interesting. And I shared that because I felt really alone in that. I felt like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm afraid again. I can't be afraid again. I've been doing this for 2 years.
Mm.
And then I thought I really this lasted for a couple months and I got really precious about my work, meaning I was far more hesitant to put things out. I was hesitant to take risks, make jokes that I was like, oh, it's not 100% perfect. That's not so funny, And I really had to sit myself down and be like, all right, listen up. You are not special. So many people are scared. So many people making something new or doing creative pursuits
Like it's
get
perfectly
scared.
normal.
It is perfectly normal. You, in or out, go there. You two. I literally was like, there are two paths. You can stop and not feel the fear, or you can feel the fear and keep going. Because apparently, keeping going and not feeling the fear was not on the menu for me. And so
Yeah.
I was like, all right, this feels weird suddenly and I don't like it, but we just have to keep going. And I made some more videos. I got back into my rhythm and I was able to exhale and be like, okay, all right, here we
Yeah.
go. And so now I feel like I'm in this new chapter of having gone through that fear wave, honestly recognizing I'm sure there's another one coming at some point, but feeling like more empowered that I got through it and got myself through
Mm.
it and talked myself through it and was just like, we gotta keep this moving.
It's super interesting because from what you're just explaining as well, I guess that we are these people, even though we are tired, we are weird, we're exhausted. If still given a chance to, let's say, like, okay, there's this exit door, you can just go by, we would still go and hit our head towards the door that
Totally.
keeps us going. We're like, no, I don't think stopping is a chance. So like there's this
Yeah.
whole fear, but you just want to keep hitting at that. You just want to keep going beyond that. So like that's what I
Yeah.
see from your experience. So yeah, you're good, Alexis. Come on.
Oh,
Yeah, that's like
I'm gonna record that and replay it when I need it. Thank you.
no, totally. Like always there to go like go on a cheer. So yeah,
Thank
definitely.
you. Expect some text from me.
For sure. Awesome. So, now that we're talking a lot about this creator journey and
Yeah.
what makes you like also be this entrepreneur and running this whole thing together, uh, there's like a lot happening in tech, right? We were just talking about this
Oh,
whole
yeah.
AI tools, Descript,
Yep.
and fun fact, both of us use
Yeah.
Descript and like huge
Yes.
fans of
Love
it.
it.
So, and like there's so much tech happening and like it's so full of energy and life. And working in tech, that too in a very, very different way, right? What are the themes that you naturally pick and work on? Because you mentioned to me that like there are multiple ways and lenses
Yeah.
through which you see tech. So, what is your rationale around picking some themes to work on your videos, and like what
Mm,
usually doesn't work, and what do you avoid doing?
mm. Oh, okay. I love the way you asked me that question. Thank you. And I'm going to start with the latter part of it, which is what do I avoid
Yeah,
doing?
what do
Because
you avoid?
oftentimes this is my way in, one of the ways in, because I care really deeply about, in comedy, it's called punching down. I care very deeply about
Mhm.
not punching down. So if something is
Okay,
happening in the tech or business ecosystem or in the world at large, that is like damaging to people or harmful to them or making a lot of people really upset, I will never ever go after the victim of that situation or someone who is marginalized by
gotcha.
the situation. Eh, But oftentimes, that thing that could be harming a lot of people is also something that is so in the zeitgeist. It feels like I have to be able to find a way into it. And I think an example of this was, and it's happening again right now, unfortunately, but the first time that we had a big round of layoffs in 2022,
Mm,
tons of companies were doing layoffs,
yeah,
and it was just talked about a lot. And this is kind of the first part of your question, but I listen. I listen to what people are talking about a lot. What is coming up at dinner? What is coming up at parties? What is coming up when I meet someone for the
mm,
first time? What are we talking about? You know? And what we were talking about at that moment was layoffs. And I was like, oh, I can't make a video about layoffs. Like that is, friends of mine are losing
mm,
their job. People are hurting. I'm not going to make a video that
yeah. It's like very
makes
dicey.
light. Yes. And then I started seeing the way that people in positions of power were centering themselves in these layoff announcements and apologies. And I couldn't stop seeing it. It kept coming up. And I have empathy for anyone that has ever had to let go of someone or do layoffs. CEOs are in very difficult positions. I have a lot of empathy for that. But there
Mm,
was something specific about the centering like yourself in a situation where someone else should really be centered, which are the people who've now lost their jobs and their livelihood, that I found
yeah.
incredibly funny. And I use that word carefully, of course, right? Because I'm not saying layoffs are funny, but this particular
Angle.
angle, yeah. And so I started writing that script, and it was called Venture Backed CEOs After Laying Off Half the Company.
I saw that.
And
Yeah.
Yeah, and I ended up being really happy with how it turned out, and I felt I was very careful with the tone. That was really
Mm,
important to me because I was also not trying to demonize these CEOs. I think, the people that I'm making fun of, or the character I was making fun of in that video, just has a
mm,
huge blind spot. They just have a huge ass blind spot where they like could not see that this was probably a preventable situation. I wanted to poke fun at the fact that the tech
mm,
ecosystem threw so much money at companies and gave them these super inflated valuations that, in my opinion, and it's not really an opinion, in some ways it's just kind of a fact, they weren't backed by real sustainable growth metrics. They were driven by like organic growth as a result of the pandemic. It's like, oh, Zoom stock went up. It's like, yeah, you know what I mean? Of course
yeah.
it did. And then, a year later when the world is completely different, people are like, oh, we just couldn't have seen this coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
So I wanted to make fun of that blind spot and then also the centering themselves. And so that was an
mm,
example of how like I picked a topic based on what my conversations were centering around over and over again, and then tried to really precisely find an angle that felt funny, but which did not feel hurtful in a way that would be punching down at people who were
mm.
experiencing a difficult time.
That's a
Yeah.
great point about punching down because I feel that like since you brought this example up of this whole venture back CEOs and the layoff
Yeah.
video, as somebody who's
Yeah.
watched that video, I kind of feel that comedy as a medium of trying to take up a very very serious thought with people is something
Mm.
that people folks wouldn't often dream about because they think that comedy is all about, oh, well, you just laugh about it and then you basically like make fun of people or like you just
Yeah. Yeah.
make
Yeah.
something sound funnier. Is that what it
Mm.
is? But I guess like there's this whole medium trying to make you reflect on something a little deeper. And I guess like
Mm.
trying to use humor as just like a channel or more like an accelerant there is the trick, right? Because the rest of it is trying to drive a very important message with people. And I think
Mm.
layoff and this comedy kind of like went in, like again, not in the sense that layoff was comedy, but then like
Right.
trying to
Right.
drive that message with people. I think I absolutely enjoyed the take of, oh my god, you can actually use humor as a channel for you to make
Mm.
somebody realize the impact that this layoff has had, and the
Mm.
fact that how you know people could do better in empathizing with these people that they're laying off, and
Yeah.
like this whole centered around concept that you just brought through. I think this is like a very very important message that gets driven home for most of us who probably watch these videos. So yeah, thanks for doing that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the thing I care most about is being funny. So if it wasn't a funny concept, I wouldn't have done it. Even if I thought,
Exactly.
oh, here's an
Yeah.
interesting point, I still wouldn't have made it. Like it has to be funny above everything and all else. It
Yeah.
has to be funny.
Yeah, like you drive a laugh, you drive a message, and like, well, like I get two candies at the same
Oh,
time. So
sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Something that I've really let go of in the last year, or the last few months up to the last year, is that I feel like I'm letting go of a need to be seen as anything other than funny. I think in the first couple years,
Mm,
I think I felt more um I think I felt still very much like in tech and business, and I think I felt like I had to be that version of myself. And I've always been quite, I hope, very authentic in what I'm making. But I think lately I'm feeling a little bit freer to just focus on making it really funny. And if that content is about business, amazing. If it's
mm,
not about business, if it's about how much I love the M dash, which is another video I've made, great. That has nothing to do with tech. If it's about, you know what I mean? And I'm feeling a lot
yeah.
freer lately to just be like, I'm going to make whatever is going to be the funniest video, whatever's on my mind right now. And I'm optimistic that the right audience will keep finding me and keep finding that sensibility funny.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like even the M Dash video, right? I guess you don't have to like really talk about tech to be able to reach to the kind of audience who go through that every day. Like when you talk about
Totally.
M Dash, it's
Yeah.
a lot of these writers and predominantly
Yeah.
like folks
Yeah.
who are in the tech space, who are probably in the writing space, kind of resonate with that. And it's mostly like, yeah, you don't have to talk about, you don't have to use tech words or business words to be able to relate to
Right.
those audiences. So like
Yeah.
I guess like predominantly putting the funny as a factor like really really makes sense here. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. As a comedian.
Yeah. That's the comedian for you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, got it. Cool. So I guess like I would now want to move into a very, very specific topic, which I think is super relatable to you. You as a podcaster, and like B,
Yeah.
you transitioning from, let's say, like a person who aided creators to being a creator.
Mm,
So like let me
yeah.
just start with this question about your earlier stints at Patreon and Twilio, which we've been like trying to
Yeah.
pull through throughout the conversation right now.
Mm,
You've worked with creators and the partnerships on the business side, which is like working alongside creators to actually being a full-time creator right now. What do you
yes.
think are the hard parts that still need to be solved for? And do you think today's tools or platforms are actually advancing at addressing those specific needs?
Wow, I love this question. I love this question so much. Okay. So let me start here, which is that I think the biggest thing that working with creators showed me that has informed my own creative journey as someone full-time doing comedy and the podcast is that this is possible and
Mm,
it's very difficult. And before I worked at Patreon, before I saw all these incredible, inspirational, hardworking, creative creators make their full-time living from their work, I think it felt impossible. And what seeing it firsthand showed me was, oh, no, no, it is possible. It is just very, very hard. That was a huge
yeah.
learning for me because once it felt, like you said, it's not that the path was clear, it's that there was a path at all. Once I saw that, I thought, okay, so I could do it. It would just take a lot of work. So that was very
Mm,
impactful to me. In terms of what's missing for creators today, um, I think this is a very interesting question. In 2021, do you remember that 3-month period where everyone's obsessed with the creator economy? It
yeah.
was what everybody was talking.
It became
And
this whole label that everybody was so talking about on social media,
yes,
and they're like, yeah,
yeah,
let's like go all in on creator economy. So yeah.
on creator economy. And I, at the time, I was still working, not in 2021, but in 2020 is when it started. And then in 2021,
Mm,
um, I had gone full time. And what I found that particular hype cycle, what I thought it was missing was this
mm,
understanding that the vast, vast majority of individuals do not want to be creators. They want to be in the
mm,
audience. And that's okay. That is okay. You need both. You really need both. And so I hesitate to make claims about what tools in particular I think are missing because
yeah.
I think the TAM that we're building for when it comes to creator tools is so small and so specific that it is hard to
Mm,
think of something that really fits all in that way. In actuality, I think the most valuable tools for me are really things that help give me my time back so that I can
mm,
spend more time creating and leveling up my business. So for example, I have an accountant through a company called Wingspan, which creates tools for freelancers and people who are self-employed. And my accountant is amazing. And I have a CPA, sorry, in addition to her, I have a tax person. And these people are so helpful because then I don't have to spend any time worrying about that. And so, as much as I'd like to say, like, a fun, sexy answer that's like, what we really need is an AI tool that sits the intersection. And I don't need that. Like, what I need is people to take the burden off of me of things that it would not be a good use
mm,
of my time to get good at, like accounting, you know? And I think that for creators more broadly, it's a very interesting time with AI right now because
mm,
which is kind of I know it's a hot button topic for sure. And I'm very curious to see what this could yield for creative people. It might make my process faster. It might change it. It might change the tastes of what people want. Think about how TikTok has changed the taste of what people want to watch, right? We used to be watching these
yeah.
long videos on YouTube. Now we're watching short videos on TikTok. On the whole, I'm painting with a broad brush, but I'm so curious to see like what AI tools for creatives, how that might change what people are
Mm.
looking for and what people like me are able to make.
Wow, that's a very different perspective, and I loved it, Alexis, because I think, like you said, like people really jump onto tools, and like there are so many tools these days to
Yeah.
help creators get started with their
Yeah.
journey. But that's a
Yes.
very interesting point to dig on, which is not everybody wants to be a creator, or let's say
Right.
they think they would want to like enter this bandwagon, but I guess they're not completely ready for it, or it's entirely not their calling, and it's something that they
Yeah.
could probably like be better off not doing. So I guess
Mm.
with the audience into perspective, there are like tools that basically I would say keeps you more at like engaged with the audience in terms of trying to say, okay, like as audience, you have you complete power over who you follow and
Mm.
what kind of content you want to follow, and
Yep. Yep.
basically like fine tune your own preferences. I guess
Mm.
like this kind of thought falls on both sides because it's more like a supply and demand kind of a thing. If we have to go back to this whole productization of it, because
Yeah.
it's like as much as people who are willing to put all in and like trying to stay committed to creatorship are like on the one side of the Venn diagram, and the other side you have folks who fine tune their preferences, who have complete freedom to choose what kind of content they want to consume, and that's where
Yeah.
all of these algorithms and stuff like that come into play. So that's a very interesting perspective to think about in terms of going after the TAM and trying to like not like productize everything, but then like trying to just make more avenues for creators to bring back some time for them to focus on the actual creative work. So
Yeah. And I also have to, I also think it's important to point out that, like, from a product creation perspective, you, I'm assuming, want to be thinking about revenue. And so
Hmm.
we're not just talking when it comes to TAM or potential customer base. We're not just talking about anyone who wants to make creative work and put it on the internet. We're talking about people who are interested in and capable of earning money from that creative work and putting it on the internet, because
Yeah.
that's a whole different ball game as well. And so the TAM just gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah, that's true. And like these are folks who are also looking for different avenues to try and understand, okay, this is where I can actually, earn, and this is where I can actually monetize what I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
build. And like you said, most of them try to create a career out of it. So for them, obviously, this is their only channel of, getting their stuff monetized. So I think that angle to it definitely, I mean, that's the real part of creator economy, right? Like going and understanding that whatever value you create also like tries to create some monetization back for you. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
that's
if
like
that's what you want from it. I also think it's totally okay to just make stuff because you like making stuff. You know what I mean?
I'm so glad you pointed that out. Yeah, yeah. Because sometimes I tell people, okay, wait, you can have hobbies that you don't really want to monetize off, and people
I know.
ask me sometimes that you paint, and why don't you like put up a website? Ha 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 ha. Stop it
Totally
there,
get that.
because I'm like
Yes,
I just want to do a few things that I would probably do for the hobby sake, and like of course, if there's a
absolutely.
way for me to like do customized stuff, I'm fine. But like I just don't want to go fully monetizable over there and like try to convert every
Good.
little passion I have into an
Yes.
actual, monetization engine. So completely
Yeah.
with you
It's
on that.
okay to make stuff that nobody sees and that nobody pays you for.
Great point. Yes. All right. So one of the last questions, Alexis, oh my God, like this whole, 45, 50 minute we've been speaking is amazing. So one last and important question for you is again something that you
Yeah.
do full time, which is your venture non-technical podcast, which recently
Yes.
crossed 100 plus episodes. Oh my God,
Woo!
congrats.
Thank you. Thank you.
And you had like so many interesting folks and like people I really look up to: Scott Galloway, Alexis Ohanian, Brian Kimmel, Mark Cuban, and Turner Novak.
Yeah.
And the best part is you just didn't talk only about tech, or rather not about tech, but you just brought up this whole non-resume, non-tech,
Yeah.
non-sexy side in terms
Yeah.
of like, oh my God, like I get to know these people as people. So why did this whole non-technical thing come to your mind? And like
Hmm.
just talk to us about this creator journey of yours.
Yes. Oh, wow. Thank you for asking about the podcast. Yeah, we just crossed 100 episodes, which is kind of difficult to believe.
Yes.
The idea for the show came backwards, which is that I wanted to start a podcast. And this was
Mm-hmm.
in the pandemic. This was in 2020. And I wanted to start a podcast because I was making a lot of videos, which was a lot of time scripting, editing, and looking at my own face. And I was like, you know what would be nice?
Let's just
It
have a
would be
variety.
nice if I could perhaps make some things to put on the internet that did not involve staring into my own face for hours and hours on end. And I also, my comedy journey started an improvised
Mhm.
comedy. And so I wanted something that was not scripted because I miss that
Hmm.
feeling of spontaneity, seeing what comes up and following the thread versus
Fun
here's what I'm
stuff.
going to say. Yeah. And so the what I was looking for, a podcast fit that hole pretty well because it was going to be an improvised show. I knew that. I knew I didn't want to script it. And then when I knew that I wanted it to be an audio medium, of course. And then I
Mm.
also thought I really wanted to be easily repeatable, because something else I was craving was some kind of routine, some pattern to follow, because the videos, it's a new lift every time. I mean, there's certain
Mm.
things I know how to do better now, but it's still, what's the idea and what's the angle? And then how can I make that angle funny and how can I perform it well? Every single time you're going through all these steps. And I was like, I just want to do something that happens once a week where I just
Mm.
get to have a lovely chat, an improvised chat, and it's self-sustaining. And so I came up with the idea of an interview show because I thought, well, this is how it can be different every week. I will have a guest. So
Yeah.
the idea for non-technical first started with like, how can I make this a thing that like fits nicely into my life? And then once I had all of that, I sat down and I was like, sweet, what am I going to talk about? And I made this doc of all these ideas, and I tried to think, what do I talk about organically? Like, what do I like having
Mm.
conversations about already? Because I thought that that would translate really well when you
Yeah.
record it. You can tell
Comes to
when
you more
someone's bored.
naturally.
Yes, right. You can tell if somebody is not into what they're talking about. And also, I was still working full time when I came up with the concept. I was not
Mm.
keen on adding anything to my plate that was going to be boring or difficult or arduous. I wanted something fun, something with crackle, something that I looked forward to doing. So I knew it had to be a topic I already like talking about. And that is a piece of advice I would give to anybody who wants to do any kind of podcast or show where you're talking to people or talking about a topic. What do you already like doing and talking about? Maybe try talking about
Yeah.
that. Okay, so
Yeah.
then I thought, well, what do I like talking about? Honestly, my first ideas had nothing to do with the tech world because I was, like I said, still working full time. And I thought, I'm already doing
Mm.
a lot of tech. And then I started thinking about how I could bring in some components of my career, tech, and business, but still talk about stuff I want to talk about. I was like, well, what does that look like? Okay, well, I could, and so there's this long doc I have that had all these different random ideas.
Mm.
One was like, what if I talked about personality tests? Like, what if I had a
Mm.
guest on every
Whoa.
week? And like, I know, and because I find that stuff fascinating, not because I think it's a Bible or it's like, oh, everything is exactly me to a T, and I'm going to use my Enneagram as how to chart my life path. But I was just like, it's so interesting. Like, I love
It
hearing
is.
about it. It is, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we love talking about ourselves and like, and I love
Yeah.
exploring and digging around in there and being like, what am I like? And so one of the initial concepts was that, how could I have people on and we could talk about personality stuff? And I kind of moved away from it because I thought I might hit a wall and run out of things.
Mm.
I thought I'd have the same conversations over and over again. I'm like, how can I not have the same conversation over and over again? And so I came up with this idea for non-technical, which was exactly what it is today: interviews with influential folks from tech, media, business, and beyond, but everything except their resumes. And that was obviously the
Yeah.
linchpin of it. And I will say that there's one specific example I thought of when I was working on creating the show concept that highlighted for me how much I would enjoy these types of conversations, which is that I thought, and I don't remember if I thought of this and then I created the show, or if I
Mm.
created the show and then I retroactively thought, I bet this was a moment for me that gave me some inspiration. But at South by Southwest in 2019, I think I saw Kara Swisher interview Kathy Griffin. And
Ah,
I thought it was one of the best interviews that I've ever seen in my life. And
huge fan of
I
Kara Swisher. Yeah.
right. So, and she was on non-technical, which is wild. That was so full circle, as you might imagine.
Yeah.
I just watched her in it and I thought, God, that was such a fabulous interview. And the most interesting parts were the ones that sort of took a little bit of a diversion
Mm.
from what you would expect somebody to ask or be asked about. And then I thought about other professional interviews that I've listened to. And I used to actually prepare for job interviews by listening to interviews with the CEO of that company because I thought
Mm.
it would be helpful for me to understand where they were coming from in their decision making.
Fine.
And so I've
Yeah.
listened to what feels like a lot of, kind of how I built this style or recode Kara's Pod was a big inspiration to me at that time when I was applying for jobs. And the most exciting parts of all those interviews were when they didn't talk about work. To me, I was like, oh, that's cool that they came up with the idea when they were out at some retreat or whatever. But the most interesting part is when they had to accidentally reveal something about how they felt when they were,
Mm.
like it was just like,
Those
oh, they're a
moments.
person. They're a person. It was so cool. And even better if then I got to feel like, oh, they're a person like me. Oh my God, they're a
Mm.
human that is like afraid of this irrational thing, or they, had a life-changing experience on a trip one time, but it was totally unexpected. Like there are all these little things that make people human that
Yeah.
we don't get to talk about in the tech and business world because people are so carefully constructing how they wish to be
Mm.
seen,
Yeah.
online, especially. And then, of course, people who are successful, and I don't fault them for it because it is in some ways a huge part of reaching success is making sure that
Mm.
you are controlling your own image, your own narrative. So I understand where the impulse comes from.
Mm.
But when it comes to interviews, I want the I want the time you felt embarrassed. I want the time you felt afraid, or the time you felt like so happy. Those are the moments that were so much more engaging to me. And so that's when it was like, this is going to be the show. I'm going to talk to people who I really admire, who I think are incredibly successful and impressive. But we can listen to Guy Raz, ask them how they built this. I'm going to ask them, well, do they believe in ghosts? Like, and so that was the show. And then
What is the
yeah,
reaction like when you like reached out to these people and said, "Wait, all I want to talk to you about is what's your favorite
yeah,
dessert, and are you like scared of ghosts or like
yes,
fantasies?" And what
yes.
was the reaction like?
You know what's so funny is I've gotten very few no's. I've gotten very few like true
Hmm.
passes. Less than 5 in the 2 years I've been doing the show.
Wow.
And mostly the reaction is, this sounds fun. And then at the
Yeah.
end of the episode, when I stop recording, a lot of my guests say, that was so fun. And it
I
means
can
that I'm doing
imagine.
it. Yeah. It means it means that I'm doing what I set out to do, which is create something fun while
Yeah.
having fun doing it. And then hopefully when people listen to it, they also have those little moments of, oh my gosh, this person who I love, like we have the same pump up song. How cool is that?
And I think going back to one of those main statements which you said, like doing something that naturally comes to you, something that you would
Yeah.
enjoy, and you would also leave this person energized at the end of the conversation. Somebody who's
Yeah.
willingly spending that time with you, like try to make their experience more, enjoyable and more like,
Yes.
oh, I really looked up to this, and I would love to
Yes.
keep doing this kind of a,
Yeah.
feeling for them. So yeah, that's like, I mean, that's so cool. Like, I mean, I know you've been doing these episodes, and as probably like somebody who's more on the listener side today, I got like a glimpse into what really actually happens at the backside of this. So thank you so much,
Yes.
Alexis, for sharing this.
Oh my gosh, this was such a treat. It's so fun to talk about this stuff with someone who obviously knows firsthand, and I've really enjoyed this.
Awesome. I mean, I can't thank you enough, because I guess like a lot of our conversation today was going around so many topics that's relatable for creators and founders, right? Because, you start with your initial ideas, which are very baby
Mm,
steps, and then you try to pick your direction. And then we spoke
hmm.
about how iterative work gets in and what kind of boundaries you have to
Yeah.
draw, and like all the fun parts to it as well. Like not just the, glamorous and the whole unsexy parts to it as well. And
Yeah.
like so
Oh,
much
yeah.
of fun
Yeah.
that could
Yeah.
happen. So
Exactly.
yeah, amazing. So thank you so much, Alexis, and wishing you all the best with this creative entrepreneurship of yours.
Thank you. You too. You too. Thanks again for having me.
Awesome.